Chapter 14, Edgewater Technology, Wakefield, Massachusetts, December 26, 2000. You would not be able to pick out James John Smith Jr. in a crowd. There are those who knew him well who would have said you could not pick out James John Smith in a room with 5 people in it. James was quiet. James was studious. James was, again according to friends and family, dull. Dull as dishwater. Smart, very smart. Book smart. The kind of smart you could get in front of a classroom full of eager students wanting to learn, then by the 10th minute of your lecture, the whole room is asleep. James just wasn't good at dealing with his fellow man. Math, science, computers were his wheelhouse, if there were no humans involved. Then it became a challenge. James was born on June 15, 1966, in the middle of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll 60s, which neither him nor his parents, James Sr. and Mary, ever experienced. They lived in the small town of Wakefield, just outside of Boston. James Sr. would get up precisely at 6:15 a.m., put on either a blue or black suit with narrow tie and white starched shirt, and be off to work by 7:30. He was an accountant for Paul K. Gilo, Inc., better known as Gilo's. They manufactured balsa wood model aircraft kits, the fun gliders that kids would put together and fling all over their backyard. Every kid except James John Smith Jr. His father, who worked for the company, thought they were too dangerous and never brought home one for his son. Mary was a homemaker. Every summer, the Smiths would head to Chesapeake, Virginia to visit James Sr.'s brother, John. They would spend 2 weeks a year in a town that had been listed in the top 10 most boring towns in the United States. They'd sit on the front porch, chatting. Or sit in the backyard, chatting. Or sit in the living room and watch John's new Zenith color TV and not chat. James Jr. would read, and read, and read. John and his wife, also named Mary, had no kids. They had no earthly clue what to say to James Jr. They also stayed as far away from the 60s as possible. It was as if this dreary, colorless family lived in their own self-contained gray bubble of existence, venturing out rarely, cautiously, and rarely into the actual real world. James Jr. attended Wakefield Memorial High School, where he graduated in the top 20 of his class. He participated in nothing. No sports, no academic or non-academic clubs. He blended easily into the high school crowd. Nobody knew him. Nobody paid attention to him. He was just there. He attended Salem State University on a partial scholarship. Actually, he commuted to Salem State University, still living at home with his parents. He dual majored in mathematics and accounting, numbers rather than people. He graduated in May of 1987 with a 3.30 average, top 30 in his class. He again participated in no on-campus or off-campus activities. He had acquaintances, students he'd partner with on academic projects. He was close to nobody. That included his parents, and he lived there. James had several positions the next few years, acquiring rather easily, not surprising given his math background, a very intricate understanding of computers and how they operated. It wasn't until 1992 that he found a position where he felt comfortable. He was hired by a brand new project-based IT consultancy business, Edgewater Technology, about 5 minutes from home in Wakefield. He was hired as their first application support specialist. A company would have an IT challenge, they'd hire Edgewater Technology. Then someone within Edgewater would bring the challenge to James, and he'd create it, fix it, reprogram it, update it. Then someone else would take that solution to the client. James didn't have to see a stranger, talk to a stranger, interact with a stranger. He got to do what he enjoyed doing, interacting not with his own species, but with inanimate objects. James was a great support specialist. He wanted nothing more than to go to work, eat a mother-made sandwich at his desk, go home, read, go to bed, and do it all over again the next day. His routine was derailed a couple of times. He lost his father in 1995. James Sr. was at his desk when he suffered a massive heart attack, dying instantly at the age of 54. His mother followed in 1997 at age 55, having a heart attack while sitting in the backyard. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you viewed James Jr. and his existence, he wasn't that close to them, so the emotional pain was minor. He did miss his mother's sandwiches, so he would think of her at lunchtime. But that was about all. He stayed in his parents' house, sold or gave away all their clothing and furniture, turned one room into a large home office with multiple computers, and another into a library. Everything else stayed the same, including his rather smallish bedroom. James was friendly with the folks he worked with. Friendly, not friends. He was quiet and shy, but not in a creepy way. Co-workers could tell he was a good person. He worked hard, helped anyone who asked for it, had a smile and a greeting for whoever greeted him. And that was it in a nutshell. Whoever greeted him. He just did not feel comfortable dealing with his fellow man. He felt most comfortable either in his office working on a challenge or in the house he'd resided in since 1966. He enjoyed his own brand of status quo. Change was not his friend. But change was in the air in March of 2000 when a new support specialist was hired. 6 foot 2 inches, over 350 pounds, with long hair and a huge beard. He took the office right across from James. They had the same job. They both were quiet, but the similarities between James and the new guy ended there. While his fellow employees might have characterized James as soft-spoken, quiet, and sweet, the new guy would have been called surly, quirky, and menacing. They had nothing in common, yet the new guy would constantly pop into James's office complaining about the company, fellow employees, or just life in general. He insisted that James call him Mucko. Supposedly, a nephew couldn't pronounce his name and would call him that. As far as James was concerned, whatever the new guy wanted, the new guy could have. He scared the living hell out of James. As Christmas approached, the new guy spent more and more time in James's office. Seems that he owed the IRS over $5,500 in back taxes, and Human Resources and Accounting were going to honor the government's garnishment order now. The new guy had asked for a cash advance. That had been denied. James tried to calm him, appease him, even took his side, even though James himself had more taxes taken out of his paycheck, so he would never have to worry about the same challenge the new guy was having. James was the one that had suggested the new guy see if he could get an advance. He told James at the time that he'd been denied, told him the person who had denied his request, and said he had a good memory about stuff like that. Christmas Day 2000 found James in his office. For several days he'd been pondering a challenge that a client had and had not been able to come up with a solution. At about 5 a.m. he woke up, suddenly realized what needed to be done, got dressed, and drove the 5 minutes into work. He had almost successfully completed the task when he heard the front door open and shut. Someone else had a Christmas Day answer, he thought. Then he heard heavy footsteps. Darn, Mucko. He saved what he had on the computer, shut it off, quickly turned out his lights, and sat way in the back so he wouldn't be seen. He saw the new guy. The new guy had what looked like an Army-style rifle. He later learned it was an AK-47 semi-automatic rifle. And another rifle, later found out to be a 12-gauge Winchester 1300 pump-action shotgun, and a large bag filled with ammunition. He unlocked his office door, stored the weapons in the bag somewhere in his office. James couldn't see where, then turned out the lights, locked his office door, and he was gone. James sat in the dark, trying not to believe what he just saw. What is going on? What did he do that for? Then his thought spun to, what should I do? Do I tell someone? Do I tell someone now? He was scared. No, he was terrified. What if I tell someone? He finds out it was all for nothing. I could cost him his job. I could lose my job. How could I call someone on Christmas? I can't call on Christmas. What is he going to do? What can I do? On and on he sat there, thoughts banging around in his head of what would be right, what would be wrong, What if it's nothing? What if it's something? Finally, he decided what he had always decided when confronted with outside dilemmas. It's none of my business. He turned his computer back on, finished his client solution, went home, and watched old Christmas movies until he fell asleep on the couch. On December 26, James arrived late to work and noticed the new guy in his office, apparently working. Good, he thought. I was blowing this thing all out of proportion. Around 10:45, the new guy walked in and started chatting with James about video games. James had just discovered them. They were a way for him to clear his head while he was working on a challenge. Play a game or two, reset the mind, solution follows. The new guy recommended a few, then heard his phone ring. It was 11:05 a.m. James couldn't hear most of the conversation. He later found out it was a Chrysler representative calling to let the new guy know his car was being repossessed. James heard the last sentence of the conversation. The new guy said, "I won't be needing it. Come pick it up." The phone was hung up. There was rustling in the new guy's office. Then out he stepped, carrying the AK-47, the shotgun, and the bag. He stopped in James's door. James urinated on himself. "Thanks for listening to me," the new guy said. Then he was gone. At 11:10 came the first screams, then the pop, pop, pop of the AK-47. "No, no, no, no!" Over and over in James's head as he scrambled to lock the door and hide under his desk. "No, no, no, no!" More screams, more pop, pop, pop. Then the roar of the shotgun. It seemed like hours to James. It was over in 10 minutes. He would learn later about the carnage. 7 people dead. 2 in the reception area. 3 in human resources, 2 in accounting. Oh my God, what have I done? James never said a word, but he was screaming inside his head. And then, silence. He heard nothing. Is he gone? Is he hiding? James couldn't move. The fear was so overwhelming that he would have tried to dig a hole through the carpet and concrete below him. Then he heard the sirens, then realized for the first time he'd wet himself. James never told a soul. He didn't tell the police. He didn't tell any of the dead co-workers' loved ones. He didn't tell the prosecution team. He didn't tell it on the witness stand while the new guy sat in court pretending he was crazy, reading a Bible while he testified. Everyone had guessed the new guy brought in the weapons on Christmas Day, since everyone would have noticed if he had brought in anything the 24th or the 26th. What no one knew was that there was someone who could not only have verified that, but could have let authorities know more than 24 hours before the massacre began, but didn't. This was one of the few times the assaulted website did not know the whole story. The card they sent to James was nice. It was thoughtful. It made James become Wakefield 24. But that wasn't the only reason he joined. He wanted to make sure no one knew his secret, that no one knew of the incredible guilt he carried with him every second of every day. So he'd check the Wakefield massacre site 3 or 4 times a week, learning more about the new guy, about what made him plot that awful thing he did, and to check and make sure no one had seen his car in the parking lot that Christmas Day, put 2 and 2 together, and tell the world what an unspeakable coward he was. James John Smith Jr. stayed at Edgewater Technologies until he just couldn't take the internal pressure anymore, leaving in the fall of 2005 for an accounting IT position at his father's old company, Gilo's. There he learned a new way of releasing tension, throwing balsa wood gliders in his backyard. He got quite good at it, in fact. He regretted his father hadn't brought him one when he was a kid. He was still at Gilo's when he received his first mentor on the assaulted site, Navy Yard 14. Still, he kept his secret. He did, however, offer just enough information that when Maxine organized the list of potential assaulted team members, Wakefield 24 was in the top 15 names. Maxine told Ray before he headed up to Massachusetts that this one was not an absolute certainty, that Ray would have to feel him out to see if this operation would be cleansing to him in some way. She had a gut feeling that it would be, but nothing concrete. Ray Wilson arrived at James' doorstep promptly at 10 a.m. Thursday, July 5th. As they shook hands, Ray noticed that James looked down, no eye contact. There was no coffee, no offer of same. James sat in a chair, Ray on the sofa. "So, Mr. Wilson." "Ray, please." Smile. No return smile from James. "Fine, Ray. Navy Yard 14. Maxine. I call her Max. Her name's Maxine." "Maxine. Nice lady. She told me I might be interested in something you're planning." Ray began what he would tell Maxine later was his tap dance approach to the plan. He started off talking about the NRA and the hold they have on Congress. No response. Ray then talked about some of the previous attempts at legislation. No response. Ray talked about Marion. No response. Ray talked about how he came to create the plan. No response. Then asked to go to the bathroom and deliberately went the wrong way so he could scope the house and the outside to be sure there were no hidden cameras, wiretaps, or crouching police. Then came back in the living room facing a stone-faced, unmoving James and told him about the plan. When he was all done, Ray said, "Do you have any questions?" "Yes, a couple. Is there training on how to use the weapons? I've never shot a gun before." Well, I'll be damned, thought Ray. That Max. "Yes, there'll be extensive training. Noble will head to the bus not feeling 100% comfortable." Here he was tossing a line. "Mentally or physically." "Good. Next question. Do I get my choice of weapon?" "Whatever you want. All of them will be illegally purchased, but if there's something special..." "No, you mentioned it. An AK-47. That's what he used." He trailed off. Tears began pouring down his cheeks. Ray was thinking, this guy hasn't changed expression, yet he's crying. What the hell? "James, what is it?" Ray had done enough selling in his life to know when to shut up. "What is it?" was his closing line. Never step on your clothes. For the very first time in 18 and a half years, James told Ray his secret. Christmas Day, 2000. What he saw, which was everything. What he did, which was nothing. What the result was, 7 of his co-workers brutally murdered. 2 of them cowering behind a locked door in accounting. The new guy blowing it open with his shotgun and killing them both. One of them had denied him the salary advance James had suggested to him. James retold going to the funerals, to the memorials, to helping plant the cherry tree in front of the building in honor of the 7 dead. He went over every detail he'd discovered since then, even the call the new guy had gotten from Chrysler that started the massacre. He went on for almost 2 hours, his voice almost a monotone, his face nearly expressionless, the tears falling from his cheeks onto his shaking, folded hands. Finally, he stopped. Looked down, looked back up again, directly into Ray's eyes for the very first time that morning. "Mr. Wilson?" James, it's Ray. You could call me Ray." "Ray, I want to join your team." His face contorted. He began to sob, head in his hands, rocking back and forth in his chair. Ray came over, put his arms around him, and held James John Smith, Jr. as he wept. Ray called Maxine at 1 p.m. "Hi, Max. Just got back in the car. You were right. I knew there was something. What was it?" "He was there Christmas Day. Saw the guy bring in the weapons. Was too afraid to tell anybody." "Oh, my God. And he's been carrying that shit around for 18 years. 18 years. I knew there was something." "He's in, right?" "Oh, yeah. He wants an AK-47. That's how in he is." "That poor man. I'll reach out to him." "Well, make it as soon as you can. He specifically asked me to have you call him so he can tell you himself." "I will. You feel like traveling?" "What have I been doing?" Both laugh. "Well, I've got 2 sets of 2, both from the Midwest, but their shooting didn't happen in the Midwest." I've been waiting for this one. if this is the one I think. Las Vegas 90 and 91. Las Vegas 113 and 114. Yep, Las Vegas.